Thank you, Satish. So we're really happy to see so many of you join well on time to this reflection this evening. And in fact, it shows the significance and the importance that this whole theme has assumed: workplace stress and mental health. Our modern kind of engagement and our times has actually necessitated that this conversation. Becomes important because most times what we've seen is that mental health and workplace is not a theme uh, that there was conversation around. But however, in recent times, with the unfortunate demise of a young and very promising young woman, there has been some attention on this, and therefore this conversation becomes very important for us as well. So that is why at Tracy we decided that we should lead a conversation on workplace stress and mental health. And also the fact that World Mental Health Day, an international day for global mental health education, awareness, and advocacy against social stigma, is observed every year on 10th October. And interestingly, the theme chosen by the World Federation of Mental Health for this year was "It is time to prioritize mental health in the workplace." And they sought to underscore the critical importance of mental health in professional setting, and the fact that mental health should be prioritized, protected, and promoted. So, our effort this evening is to create a greater awareness and consciousness about mental health in the workplace. It's also possible that many times only some kind of work, like certain engagement, we think that there is a need to think about mental health. But we also realize that all kinds of engagements across categories, across sectors, we need to bring in the reality of the issue of mental health there as well. But the fact that the whole conversation started from the corporate sector, and also many in our audience also felt such a conversation. So that is where we want to begin this evening. So we're very happy to have Dr. Jamila Koshi with us this evening, who's a psychiatrist and a counselor who's based in Bangalore. And as we speak to Dr. Jamila Koshi, we also realize that she brings over 30 years of experience to our conversation. And Dr. Jamila is also a board member of Tracy and has always been available for many of Tracy's engagement, and especially as a resource person to many of our trainings. So we are very happy that Jamila can give us time this evening. Thank you so much for being available and coming into this conversation. And I want to request all of you in the audience to please mute yourselves so that our conversation can go on uninterrupted. And as we talk, I'm sure that you all will have questions and some concerns. You can keep putting it up in the chat box. We will probably have Jamila. I'll ask questions and Jamila will respond for about 50 minutes or so. And then after that, we can pick up, questions from the floor as well as questions that you can put in the chat box. But I also, I'd also be willing to pick up any questions that may come as and when we have touched upon a certain issue. So please feel free to put your conversation in the chat box as well. So I'm not able to see Jamila's, but Jamila, welcome. Um,
Hi. You can't
yeah,
see me. Yeah.
no, yeah, yeah,
Okay. Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So, Jamila, in earlier times when we did have Tracy reflections, we did, circulate a paper, but,
Mm,
our times have changed. And so
mm,
Jamila did write a detailed paper for us, and
mm,
the paper will be made available to those of you who want it. Later on, you could give us your email ID and we can share the paper with you. So we did have the advantage of being able to go through Jamila's paper. So I want to begin, Jamila, with your paper in terms of, can you detail for us the current scenario, probably taking us through workplace situation that we find ourselves today, and the kind of impact that it's having on our mental health. And also, since, like, as I said earlier, since it started from the corporate, sector, what happened to the young girl, you could start there. And then, of course, later on, we could move on to other sectors as, our conversation
mm.
proceeds. So, Jamila, over to you.
Yeah. Thanks, Bonnie. And I'm glad Tercy is doing this. And the interest that people have shown in this means that it's really on everyone's minds. And yes, so it's time that we reflected on this. The World Mental Health Day, they gave this slogan. It's almost as if it was a sort of, well, it was so apt, wasn't it? It was just around the time when, unfortunately, that young girl passed away. Anna was 26 years old, and she was a CA, and she had just joined Ernst and Young. Ernst and Young is, of course, a company that everybody wants to get into. And she would have been very pleased when she got in, and she was very pleased. Her parents said as much. But within 4 months, the toll that the workplace took on her was so severe that she developed chest pain, and she was, stressed out. And finally, she succumbed to a heart attack, and she passed away. So, okay, there may have been some medical reason for that, but then the fact is that the stress definitely precipitated this. So it started this conversation. And everybody, of course, has been talking about this, that what did the workplace do that this kind of thing happened? And as I was thinking about it and reflecting on it, it seems that there are two, three areas, no, where the workplace really has gone a little wrong. Systemically, there's a problem. The system itself, the workplace systems are not so good. And then workplace relationships between colleagues, between employer and employee, between men and women, all these things, there is a problem in relationships at the workplace. And then, of course, there is a personal vulnerability. And that is the three areas under which I was looking at this whole problem of uh, mental health and physical health at the workplace. Do you want me to talk about each area, Bronnie? Should I just go into the details of each area?
Yeah, if you can go into the details of the areas, like
Okay.
because you
Yeah.
have detailed how our modern kind of
Right.
technological advancements and all
Right.
of that
Right. Yeah.
have,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
unknowingly brought about a whole lot of,
Yeah, that
different.
has definitely happened. So let's look at it from the systemic point of view. Okay. So the whole workplace system. Now, the system has become such that the workload in most professions has escalated terribly from the time of, say, our parents and our grandparents. I can remember when we were young that, evenings were free. Evenings were free time often. Not every day, but often there would be a free time where the family was together and you could spend some time together, and you'd have games or you'd eat together. It was much easier. Travel was easier. Work was somehow much lighter. Our parents and grandparents had a 9 to 5 schedule, means it was often 9 to 5 in many areas of life. But it's not like that anymore. The workload is so high that in most cases, people work for, I don't know, 10 hours, 12 hours, sometimes even more during a phase. There are phases in every profession when the workload increases dramatically. For instance, in Anna's case, maybe during the financial year ending, when accounts have to be done, audits have to be made, maybe in the medical field where I come from, if there is an epidemic of dengue, suddenly there will be an outpouring of, the sudden escalation of cases. So there will be patients lying on the floor, patients everywhere, and the residents will be rushing around, and the consultants will be overworked, and the lab will be stretched. So there are seasonal increase in workload in almost every field. But they've normalized this. So a humongous workload is seen as almost normal, and some people take it as sort of, well, that's how it is. That's how the workplace is. And they don't necessarily take more staff to deal with this workload. So, for instance, if you have a team of 5 or 6 dealing with some particular problem, if one person is let go for whatever reason, okay, they're not performing or something, it's as if the system, the higher ups are kind of glad to now we've removed this person, and they won't replace them very soon. So the same group of 4 or 5 then has to do the work that maybe 6 or 7 were doing earlier. So this is a problem that happens. So this is again a systemic problem, that the number of employees is never commensurate. Okay, the employers will excuse this away, saying that this is a seasonal thing, that because there is a seasonal increase, we cannot take an extra person and then we'll be simply paying them to sit on the bench. But then, so the idea is that during those few months, let the employees like sweat, let them run around, let them work for 14 to 16 hours a day. What to do? That's how it is. And, if they get sick and all that, well, what to do? That's part of the deal. It's almost as if this is the thing. So this young girl dying has kind of made people think again that, okay, this is not a good thing. Then, of course, there's a problem that work has become very complex. In the earlier days, parents and grandparents' days, even rules and regulations, it was much easier. Government regulations were fewer, internal procedures were simpler. Now everything is complicated. So the internal procedures are so marked, and government regulations have become so strict that everything is much more complex and difficult. Again, from my field, I know that now when a person comes in to get admitted, the amount of paperwork that there is now is much more than there used to be, 20 years ago. Okay, so everything has sort of escalated. It's much more complicated. Now, not only that, now there are also a lot of legal issues. So you have to cover all the legal issues. You have to prevent yourself from being sued. So you have to do all these things, because otherwise you might get sued. You have to keep to the government regulations, otherwise you may have some kind of fine or, things like that. So that becomes a problem. And then there is another problem that now email has, look, email is great. Okay, it's good to be able to communicate with everybody at any time. But then now the amount of email in everyone's inbox is so humongous that that looking at the inbox sometimes it just stresses people out, right? And sometimes you can spend your whole day just answering the emails, and you can be sort of tied to it 24/7. And not only that, employers sometimes can make you at their beck and call 24/7. So sometimes Anna herself, I believe, sometimes her boss used to send her work at 11 o'clock at night and ask her to complete it by the morning. And this is not unheard of. This is quite a common thing. So just imagine the amount of stress which is happening, the amount of increase in the workload. And then, so because of this, the targets are huge, the humongous, amount of work that is to be done, emails to everybody sort of visible in this whole process, and the whole system being complicated and very few people to do the work. And then also there is the annual performance review. Okay, so this annual performance review is something which, again, people are very scared about. So there is this competition there are some bosses who like to sort of foster this kind of competition between people, saying that they will do well if they are sort of made to work on edge, to feel that the other guy is doing better. If I don't do this, the other guy will be promoted. They're pitting people against each other, playing each other off. Now that is, again, very stressful. So you are sort of, rather than looking at your work, you're looking at how to be one up on the other guy. So this one-upmanship and showmanship, trying to be visible, being a little aggressive about your work, not sharing information, non-cooperation, sometimes repeating work because you don't want to share. So there is an increase in workload simply because two units might be competing with each other, doing the same work, competing for the same work, that sort of thing. So there is a lot of this also that goes on. And it's all adding to the stress. So you can see that the system itself is highly stressful. Okay? Then you come to the relationship issues. Now, relationships between colleagues itself, I said, you pit people against each other. Obviously, they're going to be hostile to each other. They might be very sweet on the surface, but inside you are competing. You're seeing the other person as a rival. There's no cooperation or harmony. It might happen sometimes. I hope it does, all right? But often this kind of thing also happens, which can again add to the stress in people. So one is with the colleagues. Then there is with your boss. Now, bosses are under the same stress, right? They also have to meet those workloads. They also have these targets which have come from the top. So the bosses are putting pressure on the juniors. So the relationship between boss and junior is not very great sometimes. Often people complain about, bosses who are not nice, who are putting pressure, who are anxious themselves and unload onto the employees, who sometimes are abusive. They can use bad words. They can, yell at people. They can, God forbid, they even throw things sometimes. They get abusive. So all these things can make people want to leave the job. It can reach that point. Many people leave because of a bad boss. And then one more relationship issue is this whole sexual thing. Okay. So women at the workplace often face some kind of sexual harassment in some form or the other. It's not that it's
mm,
always there, but it can
mm,
happen. You can have some people who don't, who might not be used to women so much. They might stare, they might make comments about the way you look or the way you work, some inappropriate kind of,
mm,
behavior. Sometimes just talking, watching where you are, trying to sit where you're sitting and eat food with you, that sort of thing
mm,
can happen. Sometimes it can be
mm,
outright abuse, okay? Asking for
mm,
sexual favors or touching, or all those things can also happen. And if there is no support from the workplace, that becomes a huge stress.
mm, mm, mm,
So this is the personal issue. And the last issue is each person's personal vulnerability. So
mm,
if you have a tendency towards a mental illness or a physical illness or whatever, that can get exacerbated. But
mm,
in a place where there is a lot of stress, anybody can succumb.
mm, mm.
Okay.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
this is
yeah,
roughly,
yeah,
the
yeah.
areas. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you so much, Jamila, for detailing all of these things like in a sequence and properly. Because of course, there's a comment here that says that even listening to these things are stressful. But the
Okay.
fact
I'm
is that
sorry.
yeah. But I mean, I just want to touch on that. The fact is that because I mean, these are not talked about and it's not voiced. So
Hmm.
like how you said earlier, it's just normalized. So
Hmm.
if somebody feels that these are all out of place or it's difficult,
Hmm.
then they shouldn't feel. So that is why they would feel that they are the odd one out. But I think that's where conversations like this, highlighting,
Hmm.
each and every aspect of how workplace stress can play out is
Hmm.
important for
Hmm.
us, so that we ourselves identify, okay, we are
Yeah.
under these stressful circumstances and our work culture is not something which is very normal.
Hmm.
So from this, like, there are two questions that come out of this. First one is like, while you detail, our work has become complex and family times have changed and all of that, but there must be a primary root cause for why things have come to such a pass. I would want you to talk a bit about that. And from there, another thing is like, how do we navigate through this complex situation that we find ourselves in? Maybe we can just do the root cause first and then come to the second one later.
Yeah. Well, if you look at the root cause at several levels, if you look
Mm,
at it just superficially, it seems that the primary cause for the seniors and all to behave this way.
mm,
Why is there this complexity of work? Why are there so huge targets and all that? The
mm,
primary reason apparently is the desire for profits, the
mm,
desire to see the company do really well, the organization do really well, whatever the organization, whether it's a factory, whether it's a consultancy services, financial services, whether it's a school, whether it's a hospital, it can be anything. But the desire of the senior people often is that we have to be the best, or we have to
mm,
be number one, or we have to get the market share, or we have to get a lot of profits, or we
mm,
have to, pay huge salaries. So we need this much profit. So profit and economic gain and the desire to be on top often is the driving force for the senior most people. And unfortunately, down the line, this message passes. So for
mm,
each level, this becomes the thing. Now, I don't want to say anything about the system or give a feedback to my seniors, because if I do so, they may think, oh, this one is not capable. This one is complaining. This one is inefficient. They can't handle the stress. So better to let them go. So I might
mm,
lose my job. So my concern again is my economic benefit, my personal gain. So I'm not giving the proper feedback to the bosses. So
mm,
this thing, I think, has become normal again, that
mm.
we have normalized economic gain, we have normalized profits, we have normalized my, success, or my uh, name, my reputation, my doing well. And ultimately, it comes down to sin, no? Sin and selfishness, that is what is driving all this. We see it in different forms. So that's the problem.
And also, see, I mean, of course, you said that, security and all, but and again, in our Christian circles also as well, because I think we are largely speaking to a Christian audience.
Hmm.
At our individual levels, how much of our own views of excellence, success, and contributed to this, not identifying some of these as actually, stressful situations and in
So
workplace.
You see, excellence is different. It's
Mm,
okay to want to be excellent
mm,
within limits, but
mm,
if you define excellence as being
mm,
better than the other guy,
mm,
being better than the other organization, being
mm,
better than uh, so and so or whatever, if that
mm,
is the way we define it,
mm,
then we are really asking for trouble. And
mm,
it's not, I don't think that's the biblical way to look at it at all. Excellence is
mm,
just doing as well as I can. But
mm,
the
mm,
whole problem is it's always sort of mm, comparative and
yeah.
competitive with others.
Mm, mm. Okay, okay. Mm. And so what are some of the signs that we have to look out for at workplace when we are, addressing the whole issue of mental health as individuals?
Signs as a
I mean,
signs of
like,
stress.
yeah, stress or signs that we'll have to, pause and we'll have to take care, do a mental health checkup or seek for support or help. What are some of the signs that an individual has to look out for?
Okay, see, if the person is feeling anxious, if the person is
Mm,
feeling overwhelmed, if this is persisting for beyond a certain period of time, like if it's mild, if it's going on for months, then of course you should check. If it's very
mm,
severe, if it lasts for even 1 to 2 weeks, you should check, right?
mm,
So
mm,
depending on the severity, see
mm,
how long this has been going on. If you're able to come out of it, say you have a deadline, all right, and you're a little anxious to beat the deadline. So for 2 days, you're a little anxious, you're rushing
mm,
around doing it. But once it's done, you're fine and you're able to get back to work. You're able to laugh, you're
mm,
able to joke,
mm,
you're able to play with your friends. Then it's
mm,
okay. I mean, that's
mm,
fine. Maybe you can just manage yourself. But if
mm,
the thing is continuing for
mm,
a long period of time, if you're unable to relax, if you're having sleep problems, if you have any
mm,
personal vulnerability such as you
mm,
have already had some kind of a problem, or your
mm,
parents have a problem, or you have some physical ailment or something like that, then definitely
mm,
you should think about getting yourself assessed by someone and working on this, working on deliberately uh,
mm,
finding ways to be less stressed out, finding
mm, mm,
ways to rethink your whole attitude to work. See, the
mm,
thing
mm.
is that maybe we should talk about that, no?
Yeah,
What
yeah.
should be
Yeah,
the right,
yeah. Yeah,
yeah,
I was coming to that also as well, Jamila. Basically,
yeah,
how we view our workplace is
yeah,
also, how we will function in our workplace, isn't it? So,
yeah,
what should
yeah,
be our ideal view of our workplaces and,
yeah,
how
yeah,
do we
yeah.
function? Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's important because I think that's core for even each individual employee
Mm,
to deal with stress. You have to have the right attitude to work. And
mm,
unfortunately, I don't know whether it is taught enough and talked about enough, but
mm,
the ideal attitude to work is to work as God worked, right? If
mm,
God gave work to us as a privilege,
mm,
He made the world. In that sense, it said that God himself worked, no?
mm,
And
mm,
then he rested. So
mm,
he set in this pattern that you work and you create delightful things and you do work which is great. It's amazing. It's beautiful what God did,
mm,
and it's something worthwhile.
mm,
And then he rested. So there is this pattern that he
mm,
established, and then he
mm,
gave the task of looking after what he created to human beings, and
mm,
all that we do is in a sense taking care of the task that he gave us to take care of
mm,
the world. So
mm,
whatever we do, for instance,
mm,
if we are teaching, what are we doing? We are teaching the younger
mm,
generation to look after the world and to
mm,
be responsible citizens and
mm,
to take care of your families and to be a good follower of
mm,
God and have good
mm,
values. And so this is what
mm,
you're teaching. And you're also
mm,
teaching about God's world, no? So you're teaching
mm,
physics of the world, you're teaching the chemistry of the world, you're teaching about the biology of the world, you're teaching about systems in the world, which is about uh, you know um, uh, economics and history. And so you're teaching about God's world. So
mm,
every human task, if you're a doctor, what you're doing is you are taking care of the people of the world. If you're a vet, you're taking care of the animals of the world. If you're a
mm,
physicist, you're trying to figure out how God made the world? What were the original laws that he made? When did it come to being? All these kind of things, or whatever complicated quantum physics is. Okay. And so economics, what are you doing? You're trying to work out a system where there is equitable distribution of wealth and flourishing for all. So any task can be seen as doing what God intended for us to do. And this was the pattern. And we should see it as something worthwhile and work hard, but you also have to have adequate periods of rest. And you should see your work as something you're doing for God, not for profit, not for economic gain, not for getting a promotion. Those things are just byproducts. Do we see things like that? I do think many of us do, right? There are also other things which God said about work, no? So for instance, he says, do it with all your heart. He says, do it with all your might. All right, work. That is how you're supposed to do. So he says, do it with all your heart. It means you're doing it thoughtfully, emotionally, everything. So do it with all your might means you're putting all your, you're putting in effort and time and all that into it. That's good. But then there is also the idea of making rest. There is also the whole thing of working without reward. This is what Paul told the slaves in Colossians, that you work even when the master is not looking at you. No, work even if there's no hope of reward, because what you are doing is serving Christ. But then, is that what we actually teach our people? Is that how we look at work? I think we lose that, no? So because we lose that, we are all running in this race to try and somehow do as well as we can, beat the other guy, get the promotion, get the reward, whatever.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's of course very important for us to have a right theology of how we look at work and, the purpose, and also finding God's, doing all things as unto God in our whole, workplace. Jamila, while we are talking about all these things, the main, sector of work that comes to our mind is the corporate sector, or people in very high demanding jobs. But I also want you to bring our focus on to, because I'm sure in our audience are all different kinds of people from different places. So we may have people who are working in the NGO world, we may have Christian organization, we may, teachers and different kinds. So can you take us through some of the other, workplace situations where, it is a stressful work environment and we're not aware of it. And so that we can also take note. Yeah.
Right. See, I think that every workplace is probably subject to the same forces, the systemic problems, the relationship problems, and each person's personal vulnerability. So you take the education system, all right, take a school. Now, a school is usually set up, often it is set up with very noble ideals, right? It's set up to bring education to maybe a section of society which doesn't have education, or a place which doesn't have a school, or to teach girls, or to do something like that. I remember the Bombay Scottish School in Bombay. It was started actually as an orphanage. Okay, it started as an orphanage. It was meant to be an education system for a certain group of orphans who were taken by a church. So that is how it started. But then what happens is, if it is run well, more and more people want to join that school. So then the people in charge, if they don't retain the original vision, then they think that, okay, this is going well, influential people are coming, powerful people are coming, maybe it will help us, maybe we will get more visibility, whatever. So they started taking, this happened actually in some schools, well, probably Scottish also, I think that has happened, that more and more influential people started to come. So then the emphasis on the poor and all that fades off. And you start taking more and more students because you get more and more money, you can raise your fees. So the teachers who started off maybe with 20 orphans to take care of now have 60 students to take care of, and they probably won't increase the number of teachers again. So the systemic problem is there, right? And it has increased the stress on the teachers, because the teachers now have to deal with 60 students in the classroom. And then there is the whole systemic issue of the curriculum, which is handed down by the government, and you have to finish this particular kind of curriculum. You don't have a choice in what you teach. You don't have a choice in how you can, give homework, or a lot of things are taken away from you because of the regulations and all in the systems. That creates a lot of stress. Exams have to be held a certain amount of at certain point of time. Certain classes cannot have exams. Certain classes have to have exams. There's a board exam. So there's the whole stress about the board exam. So there is a whole systemic issue which comes into almost every profession. You talked about NGOs, no? NGOs also have the same problem, no? Suppose they, or even a Christian organization, whatever, they can have the same systemic problems that you want to say, you want to maybe get the this kind of group, okay? You might have another NGO who's also competing for that kind of group or that kind of community. You might be both competing for the same source of funds, okay? So you have to present a better picture of yourself so that you get the funds and, you know, you're sort of competing with the other NGO. So there is a systemic issue here also. So systemic issues where the whole stress on presenting yourself well, on becoming the best, that probably comes, I think, into every profession. Every field of activity is subject to this because human beings tend to make it this way. We have to constantly review. So for instance, if a school board forgets its original vision, no, that we were meant to serve the poor, and it starts now catering to the rich, it starts taking a lot of people because it's making more money that way, then somebody has to make a check, no? Somebody has to review this and say that, no, this is not what we were intended to do. We need to reverse course. Okay?
Yeah. While we listen to you, Jamila, most of us, put ourselves in those places and we say, okay, we are in situations of mental stress. But at the same time, we ourselves may be people who are perpetrating, a stressful situation on others around us. Like, say,
Yes,
for
yes.
example, can you please talk a bit about situations like that?
Okay, well, I just think of the whole, the way there is a whole set of people whose job is to take care of the housework of people's flats or houses or whatever, isn't it? So the housemaid community, the helpers, the servants of the house. Now the helpers, they are in a sense our employees, right? If we have a helper in the house. Now, how do we treat them? Are we increasing their stress by the way we treat them? Do we, for instance, insist that they have to come at a certain time? If they come 5 minutes late, we yell at them. Or if they miss a day because she's having her period or she's having some problem in the house, if she doesn't manage to inform because she doesn't have a phone and she doesn't have charge in the phone or whatever, do we like get upset? Do we raise our temp? Do we yell? Are we the bad boss in that situation, creating stress to the people who we have employed, to the employee who is under us? It's quite possible we do that. For instance, we are supposed to give August 15th and January 26th holidays. They're national holidays. How many of us actually give those as holidays to our staff? How many of us actually give even Sundays as a holiday to our staff? So many people don't, isn't it? And do we give them a month's leave when they need to go home? Do we insist that they have to provide somebody before they go, right? Our employer doesn't ask us that you have to provide somebody in your place before you go for work, but we insist on that with our house staff, isn't it? So sometimes it's very easy for us to be the bad boss and to create stress in other people. And we need to have eye-opening times. All of us need to check ourselves and make sure that we are being good bosses.
Jamila, what about churches and pastors and people? What about situations? What kind of situations do you think they?
Yeah, I was thinking about that. And I was thinking that, see, churches also, the workload has increased tremendously, hasn't it? As the stress on people in the congregation has gone up because of the kind of work people do, the amount of traveling that is another thing. You have to travel 2 hours often to work, isn't it? So the physical toll itself can be humongous. And sometimes some offices have flexi time where even if you come 15 minutes late, it doesn't matter, but you can overshoot. You can just work 15 minutes later in the day. But for organizations which don't have that, if you come 15 minutes late, you lose half a day's salary. Okay. And that can be extremely stressful to people because they have to rush in the morning. They have to make their kids lunch boxes. They have to, see to the maid in the morning. They have to do everything. And then they have to leave. And sometimes there's traffic on the road. They miss the train, whatever. And so they might be 15 minutes late and they may lose half a day's salary, right? So this kind of thing has happened and it increases a lot of stress on the congregation itself, right? But uh, therefore, the pastors and the people who are in churches also have had an increase in their workload. No, they have to deal with the stress and the pastoral needs of people who are under considerable stress. And yes, so their workload has also increased. Have the number of employees or the number of people in the pastoral ministry increased proportionately? I don't know. Perhaps they have, perhaps they haven't. But certainly that's a problem. And then you just think about it, the complexity of pastoral work now, isn't it? Just think about it. Now the government regulations itself are so high. There are legal issues in many states where you have to be careful what you say. If you preach something, they'll say you're converting. If you go to attend a birthday party, they'll say you're converting. So the amount of stress on evangelists and all in villages, that has definitely gone up. Okay. I know I have several people who have told me that they are under severe stress because they want to do the work of, telling people about Jesus. But how do you do that? Because if you tell also, it's taken as you are converting, you are doing something, you are breaking the rule, law. So the legal and the government problems are also there. Then you think about it, email, okay, the same issues which were there for us in the workplace, those who are not pastors, that is there for them as well, right? People, they are available on WhatsApp also. So 24/7, the congregation expects them to be at their at their beck and call. They also may not get time to rest. They also may have issues with their wife and kids, and they may want to spend time quietly as a family for dinner. But then somebody is calling and saying, "There's this problem. Please come." So I think the workload on pastors and evangelists and all has also gone up a lot. Okay. I don't know about annual performance reviews. Maybe that doesn't happen. Okay. But surely there is also competition, no? I'm sure
The
a lot of people,
transfers.
yeah, transfers in the mainline churches. But what about competition? There are a lot of people in independent churches, no? I'm sure there is this thing that when I start a church, my church is going to be like this. It's going to be a huge church, or it's going to minister to so and so number of people. People come in with their own dreams, right? And is there a sense of competition which happens? I'm sure it happens to at least some people, that my church has to become big, or it has to be this many people, or I have to, I have to be this. Uh, I want to make a mega church, whatever. Lot of things can come in which are stressful. And then relationships issues in the church, that also happens, because not only do they have to relate to the congregation, they also have to relate to the group of elders or the board or whatever it's called, no? Who also there can be stress there as well, right? So I think there are these mental health in stress inducing issues in every field, including the church, including pastors. I'm sure many of them also are under considerable stress these days because of this.
Yeah, Jamila, thank you so much, because actually you are like kind of shining the light for us on different kinds of stressful situations that different groups of people go through. Because unless we're talking about these things and we are consciously aware, we cannot be a group of people who will care for one another, who will be compassionate, who will, be
Yeah,
at ease when things don't go up. Because all of us, we want our way, we want things to go
yeah,
the way we planned, or to be
yeah,
responded to, or to be
yeah,
attended to, or to be served, or I mean, different things are there. So
yeah,
for us to be talking about each of these groups, I think it's very important for us, as a community of God's people, to be able to understand situations that people
mm,
find themselves in, and therefore to lower our
mm,
expectations, or to lower our
yeah, yeah,
demands on others. So that
yeah,
is a good thing that you're taking us through these, different
yeah,
groups of people. But having said that, also, Jamina, this is the situation we find ourselves in. I mean,
mm,
things are not going to go back, because we are only progressing and advancing in terms of
yeah,
technology or all the other things that we are moving towards. Systems are here to stay as far as, workplace
yeah,
situation is concerned across the board.
yeah,
So having in that context, how do you think we should navigate ourselves in that
Yeah,
situation?
yeah. Yeah, yeah. Systems are there. We cannot change a lot of the systems, but we can work to make things better. And I think
Okay.
there's been a lot of conversation even in the corporate world about this.
Mm,
And I think
mm,
we also need to discuss that in our
mm,
own settings.
mm,
That
mm,
what can we do in each organization to make things better? So I
mm,
think it starts with, I think every level probably can do something. So if you
mm,
think about the senior level of management, okay,
mm,
the
mm,
board or the chief executive or whatever, or the leadership team of every organization, I think they need to just keep reviewing
mm,
whether they are sticking to the mission of the vision and mission of their organization, whatever they started with, or have they got sidetracked a little bit? They
mm,
have to see that have we allowed ourselves to run after money and profits
mm,
at the cost of our employees. They really
mm,
need to think about that. And actually, it makes perfect economic sense to do that also, because
mm,
if you don't do that, it will be long-term bad for your company or your organization,
mm,
because you cannot have people dying all the time. No, you cannot have people who are stressed, because stressed and burnt out people are not productive. That is
mm,
something which we need to understand. Stressed
mm,
people are not productive. They tend to
mm,
repeat work. They tend to make mistakes. They tend
mm,
to need to take breaks often. They tend to relate badly to people. They tend to not trust others. So the work doesn't work in sync. So creating a happy atmosphere and reducing the workload and trying to
mm,
see to the mental health of everybody is in the seniors' interest, which is what
mm,
they need to understand. If they do that,
mm,
then they will probably even anybody will sort of work to do that.
mm, mm,
A big thing that they can do is to uh, you know get target setting, correct the way people set targets. Now, what is my target going to be? Is my target going to be this many admissions, or this much money for the company, or what is it going to be? I have to get feedback from the ground as to how it should be done. I need to ask the employees at the ground. I need to ask the managers. I need to get the whole organization together has to decide this. It cannot come from the top down. It often
mm,
comes from the top down, and the people at the bottom or in the middle don't give this feedback because they're afraid that that feedback will rebound on them, that they
mm,
will be seen as inefficient or incompetent
mm,
or whatever, and therefore they will not be listened to, or I might lose my job. So they keep
mm,
quiet. They don't say anything. They struggle with these impossible workloads and deadlines. But the senior management needs to take them into confidence, ask them, and work on uh, targets which everybody is on board with. That is
mm,
a very, very important thing which they have to do. If they're
mm,
able to find that balance, no, making
mm,
reasonable profits, but at the cost, not at the cost of the employees. They have to be on board. They have to be happy about it. A happy, motivated person on the ground who accepts the goals and works for them, that is going to ultimately benefit the company. So that is a
mm,
senior management. Now, middle management can do a lot of things also if they
mm,
will
mm,
if they will have the courage to do it. As
mm,
you grow in an organization, you can be the bridge between the senior management and the junior management, and people have to
mm,
do that. They have
mm,
to give the feedback that, look, my resident is really overworked. I cannot function in my unit with only 2 residents. I really need a third resident because there are
mm,
so many cases of dengue which are coming in. So the consultant has to say this to the senior management of the hospital. If he
mm,
doesn't say this and he insists that the 2 residents have to work on all the cases, then the work is not, its work is going to suffer. Patients are going to suffer because
mm,
2 residents cannot do the job there, isn't it?
mm,
So the
mm,
middle management has to give this feedback. They have to
mm,
be the bridge. They have to say
mm,
that, look, uh, let us work with the ground staff to decide what is the
mm,
target, how much we can do, things like that.
mm, mm,
Starting work-friendly practices is very important. Okay,
mm, mm,
I think a simple thing which is ignored in so many places is having
mm,
a creche for the children of the hospital, children of
mm,
the employees. If you
mm,
have a good creche,
mm,
many women and men will be happier because they can leave their children there without worry. Okay.
mm,
I've been in a few places where there was a good creche, and that
mm,
was such a relief for the particularly women staff, I'm sure men staff as well. That, look, I can leave my kids there. During lunch hour, I can go and check whether a small baby is doing fine. Once the kids come from school, I know that they're in a good place with good people, which is clean, with good environment, good toys, where they can be employed, and they know that I'm close by. I can come and pick them up on the way back. Such a big thing. Now, this is an employee-friendly practice which is ignored in so many places, despite the fact that the law says that you're supposed to have a creche, but that is not done. Now, middle managers can see to it that these things are done. And a simple thing like having flexi time, allow people to come if they want 15 minutes late. If they are 15 minutes late, they just have to work a little longer. That's an employee-friendly practice, which is a great thing, isn't it? Then allowing people to, whatever, have other things, having some recreation space, having a good place for a cafeteria or whatever. All these things people can do, and there's no end to the employee-friendly practices which can be done at pretty low cost. But the middle managers have to think of it and do it, right? Having breaks, having a break even with the family. Because sometimes what happens is overwork, you have these overworked staff who are working 20 hours a day, okay, whatever, 15 hours a day, whatever it is. And then you say, okay, we're going to do a break for you. We're taking all the employees and going for a picnic. As it is, the fellow doesn't spend time at home. As it is, he doesn't see his kids. Okay. And now you're taking him off on a whatever outing, right? So rather than doing that, take the family also along. Have a break with the family. Tell them that, look, you're allowed to bring your wife and kids or your husband and kids. And we will have a break with the families. Now that will make the families completely on the side of the organization. Okay. So the family will be happy. Then the worker will be happy. Simple things. So I'm just suggesting a few things. There's no end to the kind of things that you can do to make it a better, place there. And then, of course, it comes to all these other things, redressal issues. If there's a complaint, listen. You have to have whistleblower policies. You have to have an internal complaints committee for sexual harassment issues. If you don't do all that, then you are telling the staff, we don't care about you. You're saying you have harassment. I don't believe you. You're just making it up. So if you have that kind of attitude, that's not helping. No? It's increasing the stress on the staff. So middle managers can do all these things. And then, of course, the staff themselves, they should see, if you correct your attitude to work, then you won't be hostile to your other staff. You won't compete with them. You won't keep all your knowledge to yourself. You'll share your knowledge. You'll work with them. You won't work in a silo. There's no question of one-upmanship. So we have to try not set the example here. And as Christians, we are to be salt and light. So we have to set the pattern. So I hope that every workplace which has a Christian will have a person, or others as well, anybody who gets this message. Okay, this is just the Christ-centric message that we are saying. That when we teach that you should work this way, then the workplace can be transformed. No? They can say, it can, have a leavening effect. People can also say that they can also relax and, okay, this one's not competing. Maybe we can chill. Maybe you don't need to fight so much for that promotion or whatever,
Yeah. So it's so important that we collectively, try to create an atmosphere where work becomes a joy, and also for the company themselves to prioritize people over profits.
Yes.
So yeah. And Jamila, just one last thing before we move on to pick up some of the comments that people have said and also open the floor for questions, is that, while it's the individual who is most affected by, the mental health, stresses that they experience in the office, the impact is also seen on the family. In terms of, can you talk a little bit about that, the long work hours, or, bringing work back home and all of that? You did touch a little bit in the beginning. Can you detail a little bit more how the family, struggles through this as well?
Yeah, I think it can be very difficult for the family because, for instance, if both partners are working like this, then just imagine they both carry their stress home. They both want to unload on the other, and it's as if who has more problems than the other, right? Sometimes it becomes like that. So if both are stressed and both have to unload, then can you imagine how, if thankfully one person is able to say, okay, I'm listening to you, and is able to sort of put their problems aside and listen to the other person, that's fine. But otherwise, if both are irritable and both have this kind of stress, then you can imagine that they will just grate against each other and it'll create problems within the family. They may fight, they may argue, their patience has run thin, they are feeling worthless, they are feeling as it is, that nothing is coming of my work, maybe I lose my job, all these things. And then that makes the kids also suffer and all
Mm,
that, right? So maybe
mm,
then the issue will be one or the other has to leave their job and they think that is the solution. But leaving your job is not actually the solution either,
mm,
because leaving your job can be stressful. You start feeling that I have been defeated and I'm worthless. And if they don't get another job immediately, then that adds to the stress. And if somebody will laugh at you or scold you, or your parents will say something, and so that is not actually a solution either. The solution is actually to work on the problem, figure out that
mm,
you're stressed, maybe get help if you need to, and
mm,
say no sometimes to your boss. Tell the boss
mm,
that, look, I cannot manage with this much work, I really need to, you really need to get someone else. Learning to say no, turning off your phone when you can, so
mm, mm,
making sure that you get adequate rest. All these things are what is required, but often
mm.
families bear the brunt of it.
And Jamila, one more thing that I wanted to touch on, which we skipped, we had
Yeah,
talked about it, was
yeah,
the whole stressful situation of homemakers. You
yes.
know,
Yeah.
yeah, we don't count them as going through stress sometimes because they are at home.
Hmm.
It's much easier. Can you speak a bit about that?
Yeah,
Housewife.
homemakers. Yes, yes.
Mm,
Well, the systemic issues might probably, if you look at systemic issues, there probably would be systemic issues there also. No, if you look at it, there is a
mm,
particular, if it's a joint family, for instance, there are
mm,
rules and there are traditions and there are methods which each family follows. And so
mm,
that is the way that has to be done. This has to be done at this time of the day. This has to be,
mm,
this
mm,
food is made. This is the way it is done. So there are systems in each family which might cause stress to people who come from outside, like daughters-in-law or whatever, or anybody in the family. So systemic
mm,
issues might be there. Relationship issues might be there, isn't it? So
mm, mm,
pressure being put by elder members or things like that. Maybe the shopping can be difficult, the traveling can be difficult, cost of living is so high, so that can be a stress. So I think the housewives also undergo a lot of stress. It's not that it's very easy to be a housewife or anything like that, and they just sit back and nothing like that. I think it can be very difficult. Then they also have the task of ferrying the kids up and down, right? So taking the kid, dropping the kid to school, coming back, cooking, then rushing to pick up the elder child, and coming back, then serving lunch, then going to pick up the other kid, coming back, then taking the kids in the evening for whatever the co-curricular activities, this activity, that activity. So housewives sometimes have a very busy day. Their workload can be huge as well. Then they have to come
mm,
back and they have to cook dinner and they have to wash up the dinner and clean the kitchen. And because they are housewives, the house has to look like a museum. The house cannot be dirty or untidy because she's a housewife, right? So she has to have everything perfect. Working women at least can get away by saying, working as in working outside the house. Women working outside the house, they will get a little excuse that, okay, they are excused a little bit, she's working outside. But if the woman is a housewife, she's expected to keep her house spick and span and like a museum
mm,
all the time. Whereas, how is it possible? She's under considerable stress herself. She may have someone to help her, a servant or whatever, but that itself is only a limited time, and there's so much work to be done besides that, right?
mm,
So I
mm,
think a housewife's life also can be very stressful, particularly if there's elders to care for, if there's a young child in the family, if there's somebody who's bedridden, there's a child with special needs. You cannot even
mm,
fathom the amount of stress that such housewives go through.
mm, mm,
Okay.
mm. Yeah,
So
yeah,
I have
I
seen
know.
many, many housewives who have a lot of this kind of stress. Okay. And
Mm, mm, mm,
expectations can be very high. So
mm,
yeah,
mm. Yeah, it's important for us to be able to factor everybody when we are talking about stress, no, and not
yes,
just a certain. Yeah, it's
yes.
so
Thank you
good.
for bringing that up.
Yeah. So Jamila, I'll pick up some of the, comments that came up, and maybe you may want to respond to some of them, or or we
Are
can
there many
go, yeah.
comments?
Yeah, I will just read some of them for you.
Okay.
There's a comment that says, I'm a victim of this problem. I think it was when we were talking about, systemic issues in the beginning, the comment came.
Hmm.
Knowing how this goes can be extremely frustrating. It
Hmm.
drains you of your confidence and self-worth. I finally quit and now waiting for something new to happen. Um, so this is about workplace stress in the beginning. Job
Yeah.
insecurity
Yeah.
has, tell
Can I
me,
just
yeah, yeah,
respond to that?
yeah.
So I just want to say to this person that look, don't let other people's opinion of you make you feel insecure or anything like that.
Mm,
You are working because God has chosen you to be in a field and He has given you the education and the skills and the gifts and the intelligence to be there. So try next time when you get into a job, try to see yourself as working for God and not for the boss, not for your immediate boss or the seniors or anything. You are there to make a difference as a Christian in the workplace. You are contributing to the long-term goal of the organization. Now, bosses can be sometimes mean, they can be demanding, they can sometimes be abusive and make you feel like, try to make you feel like this. But remember that you are serving Christ, not him
mm,
or
yeah.
her. Okay, so don't let that happen. And I also suggest, please don't leave your job like that because that has not solved the problem. No, that might have mitigated the problems shortly, but now you have the problem that you don't have a job. And that's so wait, try and get yourself help, try and get help first for your problem. Talk to somebody about it, either a coach or a psychiatrist or a psychologist or somebody. Get some help to correct your thoughts and feelings, and then figure out what you want to do about your job.
Job insecurity has taken over the peace, is another comment.
Yes, that job insecurity has taken over the piece. Yes, that's what I said. No,
Yeah.
when we see ourselves as working for the organization and we see it as I might lose my job at any time. So that insecurity about your presence there,
Mm,
that can be, yeah, it can really destroy your peace. But to you, I'm just repeating what I said. That
yeah. Mm,
please, God is the one who gives us our job. We are serving
mm,
Christ. He is the one. See, when we pray, give us this day our daily bread, no? I
mm,
think
mm,
what we are actually praying is give us a job,
mm.
isn't it? Because God
Yeah.
is not going to give us manna from heaven. He's going to give us a job where we can earn money and we can get our, buy our food and whatever. All right.
Mm, yeah.
So we have every right
Acknowledge,
to pray that.
yeah. Mm. Acknowledging the felt emotions and how positively we view it will safeguard any individual. Any thoughts on that?
Acknowledging positive emotions. Yes, that
Felt
is the good
emotions,
thing.
yeah. And how
Yeah, yeah, that's
positive
true.
we were.
That's
Yeah.
true. You should acknowledge whatever you're feeling. There's no point in suppressing it. There's no point in hiding it. So if you're feeling insecure, if you're feeling hopeless, it's good to acknowledge that to yourself, and then you can think of correcting it. Okay, so
Mm,
correcting
mm,
it with as Bonnie said, the correct theology, the correct attitude which God has about work.
mhm. Jesus expressed his emotions genuinely. Why we shy away?
Well, we are not culturally allowed sometimes to do that, and there is a sense of appropriateness as to when to do it. Also, I mean, Jesus also was appropriate in the way he expressed his emotions. So we cannot, for even if you're feeling angry, for instance, it may not be appropriate to just widely express our anger. It We need to develop our emotional intelligence so that we express our emotions appropriately. So if I'm angry, it helps for me to tell myself that, okay, I'm angry. And then, if necessary, to tell the person in a very calm voice. We may be angry, but we should not be yelling. We should say calmly that, look, I am upset and angry about this. Can we talk about this? Or can we work on it? Or something like that. Okay? So,
Mm.
yes, we need to learn how to do that.
We are considered vulnerable and emotionally affected. It's concluded we can't get to be a leader or a fitman in the organization. That's one person's experience.
Uh, yes, I think that's what I was talking about, expressing our emotions appropriately. All right. It may not be appropriate for us uh, to sort of cry on the job a lot, okay, or get angry on the job a lot, or something like that. If we do that, that shows that we are under stress and we are getting burnt out. So then go and get help from the right person. express your emotions to the counselor or to the psychologist or to the psychiatrist that you're meeting. That's where you need to express it and deal with it and correct it. So in the workplace, to express a lot of anger or to express, to cry a lot or to get hysterical or to get, or to be unnecessarily cheerful and laughing, too much. So we need to control our display of emotions in the workplace because it's a professional atmosphere, right? So maybe that is a thing that we need to learn as well.
Mm. Theology of work and theology of rest both have to be addressed.
Yes, I said that. Thank you
Yeah.
for saying that. So we need to have times of rest, which is why we talked about Sunday being a holiday. We talked about God, having a day of rest and enjoining us to have that same pattern. So we need to have rest regularly. We need to have rest every day. Okay, ideally, there may be a crisis period. As I said, if there's a whole lot of dengue patients which have come in, there may be a few days where we are working flat out. But otherwise, it is necessary for us to have every day times of rest. Apart from the 8 hours of sleep that we need, we also need to unwind. We need to have a bath. We need to sit with our family. We need to have times where we do that. And every week, we need to have a day of rest. And every year also, we need to have some time where we have a break, go someplace. Sometimes breaks with the office staff, sometimes with the family.
Yeah. There's one comment that I got personally. This
Okay.
conversation began with describing the root cause for stress as profit. Having said that, it is true that a crash or outings for employees and their families will bite into their profit margin and therefore will never become a priority. How will you tackle this?
Uh, yeah, it will bite into their profit margin a little bit, but I think in the ultimate analysis, it will help. Because if you have happy and peaceful employees who are not stressed out, they will be more productive. So they will be able to do more work and the quality of work will be better. So you will get better feedback. Now, as I said, I've seen this in my personal experience that when a person has a crash to leave their child, no, then they are able to concentrate on their work much better. But otherwise, their thoughts are always on the child, no? That how do I
Mm,
take care of my child? When do I get home? I want to get home fast because my child is alone. So your effectiveness of your employees is going down. So they need to think of this.
mm,
And I said, no, middle managers are the ones who have to push this and who have to take up the cause of the staff with the senior managers and persuade
mm,
them
mm,
and
mm,
find ways to do it. And
mm,
as we get promoted in the workplace, that is our
mm.
responsibility. We
Yeah.
need to do that.
Yeah. Yeah, I think we have seen no changes coming in organization.
Yes,
Like I
yes,
think so.
yes, yeah.
I mean, it will come about. I think
Yes, I think
as
so.
more and yeah,
I
what
hope
the
so. Yeah.
opportunity, yeah, the space and the opportunity that is there now for women employees and all of that. Slowly, I think it can. I mean, they can expand,
Mm,
and I think you pointed out rightly that mid-level managers and others should voice and take a stand on
yeah,
these things. Yeah.
yeah.
So. There are comments that came during the time when we're talking about our helpers, our gardeners, or our
Mm,
drivers. Treat others like you want to be treated. That's a simple,
yes, yes.
statement. Yeah.
That's
And
right. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. And another comment is that annual performance review for pastors also take place in their church. I think it's
Okay.
from DBF.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you for
That's a
that.
really
Yeah.
sad thing, I think. Yeah. Competition is a complex issue in Christendom, is a comment that came.
Competition is a complex issue
Christendom.
in Christendom. Yes, yes, I
Uh,
think so. So, if you look at New Testament itself, the
mm,
disciples told Jesus, right, that John is
mm,
baptizing, right?
mm, mm,
So,
mm,
John's disciples told him that Jesus was baptizing, and so that's a sort of that sort of thing is not unheard of. There is always competition. The human mind sometimes is like that,
mm,
and competition has become a very cultural thing, particularly among men, but also among women, that they feel that it is okay to be competitive and to sort of constantly want to be the best. So you compare yourself against others, not against yourself, which is I don't think it's a helpful thing really, because each of us has our own gifts and our own talents, and it's better to compare ourselves with each other, with ourselves, okay,
Mm,
rather than with each other. So,
mm,
well, and we are all aspiring to be like Jesus. So Jesus
mm,
should be our benchmark. So
mm,
that's probably the best way to do it. Yeah.
yeah. According to the Bible, God calls people to work in different places and at different times, but to serve God's purposes wherever they are. That's a comment that came.
Okay.
Yeah. Stressed people are not productive. Yeah, of course, they were just highlighting the points that you
Yes.
made. Thank you,
Yes.
Raju, so
Yeah.
much for highlighting some of these.
Mm.
Corporates now say we shouldn't say to new joiners, welcome to the family, because no one asks to resign or quit a family.
Okay. Uh, all right. So I don't understand. They don't want
Yeah,
to just look like a
yes, so
family.
organizations are not seen as families anymore, I believe.
All right. Yeah. Yeah. That's probably true, because earlier that attitude was much more there. So now they don't. Now it's very
Mm,
obvious that it's not so. Yeah. But
yeah.
then
Mm,
when we look at organizations as just this vast and impersonal kind of machine, and you're all cogs in the machine, that can actually make it a very impersonal space to work. And yeah, it leads to more stress among employees. So yeah.
mhm, yeah. Yeah, I mean, that's very true. I've always had this like, if the workplace is not a happy place, then one doesn't need to stay there anymore. Yeah. A
Yeah, but
lot of stuff about,
we could probably
yeah.
try and make it a happy place when we have enough, yeah. Mm,
Yeah,
mm,
a lot of stuff about care for mental health on the part of the management is shared and all that needs to be done. What
mm.
about the need for staff themselves to be well adjusted and care for themselves? Don't they have a responsibility too?
Yes, we said that at the end, that look, we don't want to. If you remember the finance minister, when she was asked about Anna Sebastian's death, she went on stressing how Anna should have, or Anna or other people in her position should have had spiritual resources, and they should have been strong, and et cetera, to tackle the workplace. And that was actually criticized very harshly by everybody, because in Anna's case, for instance, the workload was definitely contributory to her problem. So, which is why I also started with looking at the problems from the systemic issue, okay, from the systemic
Mm,
perspective. And then we looked at the relationship issues, and then we looked at each person's personal vulnerability. And of course, ultimately, each person has to try and negotiate this on their own. And so, yes, you have the responsibility of taking care of yourself, of making sure that you are having the right attitude to work, making sure that you don't get stressed out by, your bosses or whatever, being able to say no, explaining there will be times when you are not available to take the phone or attend to your WhatsApp messages or whatever. So negotiating all this is not easy, but you're going to have to do it. But you will need help from systems changing, which is why let us not let the systems off. They have to change as well. Okay, if there's a gap here, uh, I just wanted to share about this book. This is Should I Care? Can you see it, Bonnie?
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So
Not clearly.
this
It's
is a book that
I think
some
you'll
of
have to
us,
put, no,
it,
because of the blah.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Okay. Here, should
No,
I
Back
care?
a
you
little
need
back.
to hold it near to your face.
Yeah, there it is.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay,
Now it's
yeah, yeah,
fine. Yeah,
yeah. So this is a book that some of us wrote, and it has a couple of sections on work and all that. So I suggest you all also read this. Okay.
yeah. Yeah.
If you have it, it's available with many of our
We'll
friends.
put it
Yeah,
in the chat box, the
yeah,
title. Yeah.
yeah.
A comment that is here is treat people with kindness and be gentle in the office or outside is a comment that came.
That's great.
Welcome.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's wise
How
and
as a
good.
manager to handle Generation Zs in the workplace who are stressed even for small issues?
Well, I don't think we should blame Generation Z about this. Okay. The issue is that there is a huge workload, there are impossible targets, there are deadlines, there are, um, you know, the whole stress of systems and emails. And I think we also need to sort of figure out whether we are overburdening them. And if we are, then to lighten their workload, to get a feedback from them as to how much it is excessive, maybe helping them with getting a few more staff, or giving them adequate days of rest. And I think we also have something to do. And then listening to them, figure out what the problem is. I think every manager should know, every person who's employing someone else should know a little bit about their staff. No, you should know your staff's position, their family, their vulnerabilities. Help them out as much as you can. So maybe that is also required.
A comment that came from the YouTube, those who are viewing YouTube, is it's hard these days. It's like the devil controls everything.
The devil controls everything. Yeah, he's kind of ruined it for us. The sin has messed up the workplace royally. Yeah. But we can reclaim it, because as redeemed Christians, it is our birthright in a sense to reclaim work as something which is God-given, something which we do with joy, and something which we do with delight. It's something that we do with commitment and passion without looking at the reward. And the reward will come, because God is no debtor. I mean, it may come. It doesn't necessarily have to come. But if we make the reward the focus, then that is not pleasing to God, I think. So that is the wrong attitude to work.
There are gender discrimination at workplace. How to manage that?
Unfortunately, yes, there is gender discrimination at the workplace. So again, I think there's a systemic problem. So the managers and the senior managers should be made aware of this, and they should, I think, correcting it from a systemic point of view, conduct gender sensitization workshops. That is necessary for every workplace now. It is important for them to set the tone and role model equality, and also give positive affirmation to women. That is important. So these things should be discussed. And maybe we can talk, if there's gender discrimination at your workplace, perhaps you can talk in a very balanced way. See, when you talk to your HR people also, don't let it be an emotional conversation, because then they'll say, oh, you're emotional, that's why you're saying all this, okay? And speaking again from having seen this happening. So speak in a very calm way, but let them know that there is this discrimination happening and it's not good, and it will create problems in the organization if this comes out. So you better fix this. So that might be a better way to tell them, okay? And ask them also to make sure that there is enough of training given to people so that this doesn't happen in the future. And if there is a case, by all means, insist on having an internal complaints committee set up. Push it, because that is a necessary part. It is necessary by law. If they are not doing it, you can actually complain about them to the necessary. There are authorities, you can check that up there, you can complain. Okay?
Yeah. I want to read a comment. Most of it you have addressed earlier, but I'll nevertheless read because it's there. Many in social media blame and said Anna should have quit. Why continue to bear the abuse, and could have lived? Instead of fighting the system, which seems harder and almost impossible, many people take the easy way out and blame the victim. Please share your thoughts on this. Not many are willing to discuss systemic abuse, laws, etc. in the workplace.
Yeah, why should Anna quit? I mean, why should she have to quit? The system was wrong. The system has to change, no? But yes, if you find that you are totally unable to cope, then you start looking for another job by all means. Okay, if you have told your bosses and they're not listening, if you have tried to say, I cannot work beyond this particular time, and they're not listening, if they are abusing you, if they're giving you, sort of ultimatums, you do it or you quit. Or if they if they are not on board with any kind of change, then you may have to think of a change. Yes, but do it carefully, thoughtfully, and then change. But I think that we need to highlight this to the bosses as much as possible. And as far as possible, don't change. See, you can combat the stress also by sort of not worrying about the reward, no? So if you are doing the work, you might have to sometimes say no. saying no is something which everybody learns after a year or two at the workplace. I think Anna was very young, and her mother's letter brought that out. She was not able to say no. So that is also the problem. Okay, that we have to also teach our people how they can say that, look, I'm sorry, I cannot do this week because I'm having this problem or that problem. I will catch up and do it next week, I promise. Something. Don't just give a no, but tell them when you will do it. And that I'm pushing the deadline by 1 day or 2 days, but I will complete it by Tuesday. And then make sure you complete it by Tuesday.
There's a very personal situation here. I work in an all-women's college under a toxic head. She always shouts at me in front of the students. Many have complained about the head to the HR and they desperately want to replace her. But meantime, I need to handle her, who corners me often. How do I handle people like that?
Okay, so if she is yelling at you in front of the students, don't worry. The students are seeing who is the one yelling. Okay, so you do not have to. The natural tendency is to feel humiliated and to feel that the students will think bad of me or something like that. But correct that thought, because students are not fools. They know who is the one yelling, and they know, and the talk would already have gone on. A principal always yells. Okay. So stop feeling humiliated and stop feeling set upon or anything like that, because apparently she always yells. Okay. Now, on the other hand, you try to see that as a loyal employee of the place, you probably try and see how you can help your boss in some way. Check out if there is some particular thing that she wants done or something like that. You can just volunteer for that. Just ask her that, do you want me to do this, ma'am? Maybe I can take this off your plate. So sometimes just a kind word to the boss also might help. Okay, she might be disarmed by your kindness, and that might help. So try things like that. Try different things, but be sure of one thing: you are not to blame. If somebody yells at you, you are not losing face or anything like that. That person is. Okay, so be sure and strong in that. So you be calm. Do not show any anger or any retaliation or anything like that. Just calmly listen if you must. Okay, and afterwards, if you want, not in front of the students, maybe afterwards you can tell her, ma'am, I really do not appreciate your saying that in front of the students. If you have a problem, you think you could tell me by myself? I would really like that. I do want your feedback. So disarm the person by speaking without heat. Just some suggestions. But I understand that it's a difficult thing for you. Okay. All the best. God bless you.
Yeah. See, many of you have asked for the paper. We are unable to put it in the chat box as of yet, because actually we publish it as Christian Mind series and then of course bring it together as a journal. Also, that is why we've requested you all to give your email IDs so that we can send it to you. We'll definitely send it to you within the week. So if we are not able to put it in the chat box. Second thing, Jamila, also before I go on to other questions, there is a request whether your details can be shared, whether email ID or contact.
You can share, no problem.
Yeah. Okay. I'll request Satish or
Email ID you can share. Okay.
Yeah, email. There's a question from the YouTube. There is still so much stigma about mental health in Christian organization and churches. Glad that a session like this helps us break the ice and demystify mental health. Please suggest if there are simple tools for team members to screen themselves for early signs of stress in the workplace. Thank you.
Okay. Well, there's a simple test called PH9. You can download that from the net and work on that. Okay, that's a simple test for depression. Then there are more complicated tests like the MADRS and the HAM-A and HAM-D. So you can try any of those tests if you like. Okay, but PH9 is fine.
Yeah. There's another one. Sometimes I'm getting angry for small things as well after a stressful day. Immediately I feel guilty, but then again, when some uncomfortable thing happens, I get angry again, and this cycle keeps on going.
Okay, if you're getting angry and irritated very easily, I would suggest that you please go and consult somebody. Okay, because we should not normalize getting angry and irritated all the time as just part of us. It does not need to be part of you. You can learn to deal with this. Okay, so please go and get a mental health assessment. and talk to a psychologist, counselor, or psychiatrist.
Yeah. I'm skipping a question on Anna because we've kind of covered it already. Hi, Jamila. If you have a stressful day in your workplace, how do you see it and how will you overcome it?
Okay. Um, well, if you have had a stressful day in the workplace, maybe once you come home, you can talk about it to somebody, your spouse or a friend or somebody, and sort of just process it with them, or if not with them, at least with yourself. Okay, process it, see what could be done about it, what was contributing to the stress. So it's important to think, no, that did I make some mistake or did the boss make? So process what happened, figure out whether there was anything that you could have done differently about the stress. Figure out also whether there's some correction you need to make so that this doesn't happen in future. Uh, Also figure out why you emotionally reacted that way. Why were you stressed? What were you thinking? Were you thinking, I cannot complete this task? Were you thinking this is not fair? Were you thinking, why didn't it go to some other person? Were you thinking that I'm going to be exposed, that I can't do it? Or what were you thinking? Sometimes what you were thinking is a clue to what your worry or fear is. So then you can deal with that. That if I don't have this particular skill, this job requires this particular skill, you may just need to update that particular skill, isn't it? So figure out what was going on. That is important for you to do that at some time. Having done that, then commit it to the Lord. And then say that, Lord, this is the problem. I really struggled with this today. Please help me to deal with it tomorrow. I should not repeat tomorrow. Help me to be able to do better at work and help me to reflect you at work. So pray, calm yourself, ask the Lord to be there with you. Forgive yourself if you made any mistake. Forgive whoever did the mistake if they did something to you. So close the day on a calm and peaceful note, okay? And tell yourself that tomorrow I'm going to work and enjoy my work because that's what God wants me to do. Okay? Try that.
Normally, Tracy reflections, we wind up by 8:30, but this today being a very important and, useful session, and questions are up in the chat box coming one after the other. And I'm also not able to open the floor up for direct questions. I'm going to request with all of your permission that whether we can stretch it for another 15 minutes or so, and then maybe we'll wind up and then still keep it open. Is that okay?
Okay by me, but
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. Yeah. So this is to be gentle and kind is sometimes seems to be impractical, particularly when you're being treated rudely and being suppressed. How to deal with this?
Yeah. So, well, that is something which you're going to have to figure out with the Lord, no? That how do you deal with it if you're being treated rudely? The Lord gives us some guidelines as to how to do this. That if you're being, He said that if somebody asks you to go with him 1 mile, go with him 2, right? And if you've seen The Chosen, they have an interesting episode on that, where the Roman soldiers are laughing at Jesus and the disciples, and they force them to carry the stuff for 1 mile, and how Jesus chooses to carry it for another mile. Okay, so they show this, that he says, isn't that your place? We're going to take it till there. So sometimes that can totally disarm the person who is being rude to you. So they show how the Roman soldiers completely get really surprised and stunned, and they then start talking to them in a very normal and friendly and respectful way. Okay, so sometimes this may be the way to do it. You might find that it creates a change. Sometimes it may not. And if it is a persistent rudeness or whatever, you may need to tell the person that, look, quietly, that, look, do you have something against me? Why are you talking this way? I'm sorry if I've offended you. You may need to talk to the other person and figure out what's going on with them. But simply responding angrily in turn is not going to solve anything, no? It's just going to create a furor and it's going to make the situation worse.
Believers work at non-believers is a big battle. No,
Believers work at
believers
non-believers.
work at non-believers organizations is a big battle.
Uh, Yeah, maybe, but look at it as you being the representative of Christ there. So it's fine. I think I would be very happy if a lot of Christians were working in a lot of non-Christian places. We should be there. They are our friends. They are our country people. They are our brothers and sisters. We can't work only in our settings, no? So it's fine. We need to be there, but give the same feedback to them. There's no reason why we can't give the same feedback. That look, the workload is too much, or we need to hire some more staff, or we need to give the employees a day off, or let's arrange something for the employees. So I think we can bring our ideas and our Christ-centric, God-centric view of work there as well. That's a challenge. Let's do it.
Jamila, I just happened to see an issue appear as I'm working now, as I am attending this call, and not sure how. I would have let it go out of my hands to see how it would play out as a way of handling the stress. But now I responded to de-escalate and thereby reduce stress of bunch of stakeholders, and also in the process made sure I didn't offend the person who created this by keeping it objective. So there's an
Okay, that's very
immediate,
nice. That's a very
yeah.
good, and that sort of answers the question of the other person. Somebody escalated the situation, they were perhaps rude or whatever, the equivalent, but he or she deliberately de-escalated the situation, and that solved the problem rather than anything
Yeah,
else. So that's
yeah,
great.
yeah.
Thank you for that
Yeah,
testimony.
yeah. Thank you so much for sharing that, Joseph Wood. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Uh, while working on one, one may have access to support system, means, etc., for mental health and colleagues around. But after layoff, many don't find support, and stress could be much higher when one remains unemployed. And self-worth decreases drastically during such struggling period. How to address and handle such a challenge? Is there support group for laid off employees?
Okay. I am not aware of any support group for laid off employees. If anyone is aware, please put it in the chat box. Okay. But my suggestion is this, that look, as Christians, we have every right to ask the Lord. We are told to ask the Lord for our daily bread. And I'm repeating here that nowadays, in today's 21st century scenario, when we ask the Lord for our daily bread, we are actually asking the Lord for a job. So when we say, give us this day our daily bread, that is a prayer that we're making to God, and we have the right as God's children to ask for a job which will provide us our needs. All right. So keep asking the Lord for that, and we trust that He will, in time, answer your prayer and give you the job that you need. And in the meantime, please don't think of it uh, as a as something to cause you low self-esteem. Okay. And here I would just again want to remind you that God uses all these things in our life, uh, and He brings us out of them. It's not a punishment for you. It's not anything like that. Okay. God allows trouble in our lives. Sometimes it happens because life is hard, yes, but He speaks to us through them. And read the book of Job and see how God sometimes has His own purpose, okay? And He only wants us ultimately to know Him and follow Him, and He uses everything to make us closer to Him. So I would just say that look, don't think that it's something to do with your self-esteem, that you caused it or anything like that. No, don't think that. Learn your lessons and prepare for your interviews when you go. By all means, if you have some lacunae in learning or whatever, fill that lacunae. Be practical about that. But be sure that God will uh, answer your prayers and give you the job that you need. Okay.
Jamila, is adventure therapy and yoga okay to deal with stress?
Okay. It's see, physical exercise. I'm going to take that yoga part as just being physical exercise. All right. So physical exercise is definitely good for stress in the short term, but it's not that it will deal with everything. All right. So to a certain extent, it's good. It will help you to relax, get out, take a break, all that. So that's good, no problem. It may help you completely if it's a mild problem, but if it's a more severe problem than that, then it may not be sufficient. So you may still need to consult somebody and check if your problem has not gone away. But by all means, otherwise, go for physical exercise, no problem. All right. I'm not going into all the details of yoga and all here because that will totally sidetrack the discussion. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
A question. I work in a private college, working as an educator. I find it's very easy to lose oneself in the deluge of work.
In the
Having to
day.
be yeah,
Mm.
having to be present for students can be taxing, especially if you are overwhelmed with academic obligations to the college and to our pursuits as well. I find this gets in the way of my ability to connect and mentor students who come to me asking for help. If I can get advice on this, I'll be grateful because it's something that I'm afraid may affect my relationship with students.
Okay, so what I've understood is that there is a lot of work, and because of
Mm,
that, you are not able to deal with to have
mm.
personal time with the students. Is that correct?
Students, yeah.
Yeah, that's what you're
Asking
saying.
for help,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. So I would think here what you need to do is give this feedback to whoever's in charge so that they maybe hire another person. You sit down and have an honest talk with your with your administrator, whoever it is, the college dean or somebody, and tell them that, look, there is so much work that I'm not able to spend time with the students. And it would be really good if you had one more teacher to share the workload or something like that. You may need to give this feedback. If we don't give this feedback, how are they to know that you are under this kind of stress? Okay. So I think it's very important for us to try to correct the systemic issues in our workplaces so that that will help us to deal with the problem at a personal level as well. Once you have told them, then you can see if they actually listen to you and take someone else, then well and good, right? If they don't listen and they don't take anyone else, then well, you can probably wait for some time and then repeat it to somebody else. Okay, tell someone else about the problem, and that's probably what you can do. Otherwise, you might have to, well, you have to somehow find the balance. If you can't mentor the students because you have too much work, then this is what I'm saying. There's often a systemic issue. No, you have to choose between the two. If you try to do both, you might end up having no time for your family or whatever, and that might be another stress.
Yeah. If stress is largely due to pressure in the workplace, should we consciously seek for jobs which are less stressful with lower pay?
That's a good question. Um, some people may be happy doing that, okay? And if you find that you're not able to cope, certainly you should do that, okay?
Yeah. All of us come under stress. It's how people respond and their makeup differs. Do counselors and psychiatrists respond better? And do we all need to understand some bit of that, Jamila?
Yeah, well, yeah. See, the thing is that again, the same thing applies to us as well, no? It's not
Hmm,
that we are free from this. We also have workload issues. We also
hmm,
have, there are a lot of psychiatrists who never give their phone numbers to patients because
hmm,
patients will call at all hours of the day. They will send messages at all hours of the day. Sometimes you'll have 20 messages from one patient who's stressed out or whatever. These are patients who are really stressed out. So
hmm,
that can cause a lot of stress to psychiatrists as well. Yes,
hmm,
sure. But then we
hmm.
are probably trained a little more in picking up these things so we realize our own problems and hopefully we learn to deal with it a little better.
Yeah. So, of course, yeah, but yeah, I have no comments on that. But
Yeah.
Jamila, can you also repeat that online test names that you said earlier? I mean,
That
and if
was,
one of us.
yeah, that was PHQ-9. Okay, that's one
Uh,
test. Then there is the HAM A and HAM D,
mm,
and then there's MADRS. Okay,
mm, yeah.
so
Yeah.
PHQ9 is generally sufficient.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you so much, Jamila, for, such, um, extensive presentation in terms of touching so many different kinds of issues and problems. And do you have any I mean, our questions in the chat box is over. So what we can do now is, if you have any final comments, we can you can take a couple of minutes for your final comments, and then I'm going to request Raju to close in prayer. So after prayer, we can leave it open for people to, ask directly if they want to ask any questions. Jamila, if you're still willing to spare us some more time.
Okay.
So yeah. So yeah, over to you, Jamila. Any final comments that you?
Final comments.
Mm,
Uh, I just think that this is important enough for so many people to come and talk. So I think
mm,
the churches should take this up and
mm,
talk more about this. Okay.
mm,
We also
mm,
probably need to reach out to others as well with
mm,
this God-centric view of work. I
mm,
think
mm,
others also would probably take this from us. It's not that they may not.
mm,
So
mm,
maybe having a talk on, we could try doing it in different settings. Churches
mm,
could
mm,
try.
mm, mm,
They could
mm.
encourage HR professionals to do it. So different people
Yeah, yeah,
can work
yeah,
on
yeah,
this a little
yeah,
more.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Yeah, I think it's a very important suggestion, not just caring for ourselves and our own, but
And
even
I
taking
think,
it to the
yeah, and I think all of us, particularly older people who are in more senior levels, we should
mm,
take it on ourselves to deliberately try to make the workplace better for the juniors.
mm,
Okay. I remember that my husband started
mm,
flexi time in the organization he was with,
mm, mm,
and how
mm,
grateful the staff were. It really struck me that the staff
mm,
were
mm,
so grateful to him for starting that.
mm, 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 mm,
That flexi time helped them so much because they were not rushed and stressed in the
mm,
morning trying to reach at that time. That
mm.
look, if you are a little late, you can just go
Jamila,
up a
your
little later.
connection.
You
Mm.
can't hear me?
Yeah, in between it just
Yeah, yeah.
you start off from Flexi. Oh, mine is unstable. Sorry.
Yeah, yeah. So I was saying that
Mm, mm,
that if you just that small change was made so much of a difference to people because they didn't have to be anxious and stressed in the morning anymore because they didn't have to rush to come to office by that time. If they were 5 or 10 minutes late, it didn't matter.
mhm.
So that itself can be a big thing. So we all can
Yeah.
find ways to make other people's lives better. No?
Mm, mm,
Particularly those who are senior. We have
mm,
representation from all sorts of workplaces, and thank God for
mm,
it.
mm, mm.
And well, may the Lord help all of you to do that.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you so much, Jamila, for your time, and may we all be people who will be caring and compassionate in our workplace, and also be alert, to stressful situation, and ask God to help us to be able to deal with it better. Raju, please, can you lead us in prayer now?
Let's pray. Dear God, Heavenly Father, we are so grateful to you for this evening, for such an important topic that concerns all of us, and especially a lot of people who are battling it in their personal lives, in the job front, in the whatever sector that they are engaged in. There is a whole lot of stress, and almost like a pandemic, we are facing it not only in our nation but across the nations. And Father, this evening you have given us opportunity to try to reflect upon this as to why such a situation has arisen. What are some of the factors that are fueling it? And Father, we want to thank you for such a resource person like Dr. Jamila, whom you have given to us, who through her many decades of experience of helping people, counseling people, and uh, those who have uh, faced it in their own life situations in families. And Father, we want to thank you that she is able to share those insights and learning with all of us who are taking part in this conversation. We want to thank you for Bonnie, who facilitated it in such a way that many of our questions could be answered through this sharing and conversation. We also want to thank you for Tracy, who organized this talk. And Father, we thank you for the initiative to recognize this as a great need. And we, as it has been spoken, we pray, Father, that it would lead to many more such conversations across our dining table, across our coffee chat, or across the church chai time reflections post the service, or many other seminars or workshop being organized where we invite people, as has been suggested, people from the HR, people from the corporate, people from the churches and organizations who would be able to share their expertise and knowledge, and also the experiences by which we will be able to bring about some kind of a succor to this problem. Father, we especially want to thank you for your word and the model that you have given set for us in terms of the work and rest pattern that we have violated so often. And Father, the consequences of it we all are experiencing and facing in our lives. And so, Father, we pray that you will help us to turn to the principles that you have set for us, that we will live our lives on those, and we'll be able to also be a model and help others who are facing. We especially want to remember for such families who have experienced grief on account of losing their dear one because of this stress leading to suicide and other kind of diseases which have taken their lives. Father, we pray that you will continue to comfort them and grant them your peace. And we pray that you will help each one of us who have been a participant of this conversation, that we will take step in our own lives and in the lives of our dear ones to prevent such occurrences. For we ask this in Jesus' name. Amen.
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 Yeah, thank you so much, Raju. And I want to thank each of you who've joined this evening for this conversation. It's been a long evening, and I know Jamila also must be really tired, but yeah, I pray that y'all will continue to be, blessed by, the YouTube recording will still be available. Y'all can go back to it again to be able to listen to it. Thank you again and have a pleasant evening. You're on mute. Jamila, you're
Thank
on mute.
you much, Bonnie.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
thank you so much, Jamila Didi. So
Yeah.
good. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm.
Thank you. Yes, good response.
Yeah. I
Hi,
think
Jim.
people are leaving now.
Yeah.
Should we? I mean,
Hi.
I don't know. Satish says we should wind up.
See you,
Hi,
Jim.
Bhaiya. Hi, Bhaiya.
Hi.
Hi, everyone. Thank
Hi.
you, Jamila Didi, and thank you, Tracy, for that. I also
Okay.
want to say, sorry to Jamila Didi for being a cause to your stress, because I had given your number to one student. I met one student in Hyderabad and I was trying to counsel her, but I felt I was not able to do because she had very intense case. So I
No, you
referred,
did. No
I
problem.
gave, I gave your number
Please,
to her.
please, that's fine. You can give my number, no problem. I give my number to everybody.
But is there a way that we can give your number, like they can take an appointment from you and even pay you?
Yeah, so usually what happens is I usually tell them to take an appointment through Baptist. Baptist has an online portal. So they
Hmm.
fix up the appointments for me. So then I don't have the headache of arranging the
Right.
appointment and all that. So you can just tell them to
Mm-hmm.
go to Bangalore Baptist website and they
Mm.
can take an appointment through the online portal.
Okay, Didi. Okay.
Good to see you looking well, Jim. Yeah.
Thank you, Didi. Thank you.
Yeah, y'all can come to the Tracy website. You'll find the link to the recording. The recording definitely be available. Those of you who want to contact us, you can contact us through the Tracy website. Satish, you're on mute.
Bonnie, I've given the email ID of Tracy, admin@tracy.in. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay, bye. Thank you so much.
Hi,
Thank you,
Satish.
Bonnie and
The
Sharmila.
others.